Okay, I think we're going to get started. For those who don't know who I am, I'm Phil Caniglio. I'm the co-op director here at Hofstra University School of Engineering, and I'll be introducing the guest speaker today. I'd like to welcome everyone to a DeMathis School Executive Speaker Series talk. But before I introduce our guest speaker, I want to let everyone know that after today, we'll be scheduling 3 more of these during the semester. In the next few days, we'll be sending out emails with dates and times so that you can register for them. We hope to see all of you at each one of them. So now, let me talk about the guest speaker and the subject matter. The subject of today's talk, Defining Manufacturing, Its Impact on Long Island, is a very relevant and appropriate one. It was highlighted during this past spring and summer when all of us tried to acquire products like PPE and necessary things such as paper products and cleaning supplies. Most of us never give a second thought to where toilet paper or sanitized solutions are manufactured. In addition, we learned how the global supply chain affects the delivery of these products and many other items that are needed in our homes and businesses. Today's guest speaker is not only a good friend of mine, but more importantly, she is an outspoken champion for all of the thousands of manufacturers here on Long Island. From aerospace to pharmaceuticals to the wine and the craft beer industries. Known as the cradle of aviation, Long Island has a strong history of being a center for aviation and defense innovation, and is the CEO and owner of GSE Dynamics, a 50-year-old hot-pod-based defense manufacturer. She is also the president of Ignite Long Island, an industry-led trade association that supports and advocates for Long Island manufacturing. Her talk today will provide an overview of the current state of regional manufacturing, the impact on our economy, and the continued focus on workforce needs. A critical issue Anne will focus on is the collaborative needs between industry and educational leaders in creating the next generation workforce, how to support New York manufacturers in their growth strategies, and how to ensure that New Yorkers are manufacturing what New Yorkers need. Lessons learned from COVID-19. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Anne Shybunko-Moore to our Hofstra audience. Anne, welcome.
Thank you so much, Phil. And Phil has been an incredible advocate for manufacturing, so this should be a very natural and comfortable conversation that we have for you this evening. So I am typically one who likes to speak in front of people in person, not typically in front of a screen. I tend to just follow my train of thought in different conversations, so I will tell you that there will be a PowerPoint presentation that I have up there, but I very well may wander from the bullets that you're going to see on those slides. The other thing I know, Phil, you're going to be managing the questions that are coming in.
Yes.
Typically, I know we wait for the questions until the end, but if one of you has a question that is relevant to what I'm speaking about, please, I know Phil will manage that, and I will be here to hopefully answer those questions as they come to your mind. So first off, I want to talk about the title, actually, of Defining Manufacturing, and why did I label it that? I go around to many schools talking to kids at career days, talking at STEM events, and you would be surprised how difficult it is for me to get a elementary school, junior high, and even high school child define what manufacturing is, right? So I think that's actually a fundamental sort of root cause as to why we find ourselves trying to figure out the value of manufacturing and how we can advocate for manufacturing. And it is funny when I walk into these schools. So in basic, right, manufacturing is you take a raw material and you do something with that raw material and you end up with a final product. That is the most simple definition of manufacturing. And again, it's interesting. So when I ask the kids, you know, please raise your hand and tell me if you have a mom, a dad, a relative, or anyone in manufacturing, I often hear the infamous crickets in the classroom. Kids really don't know, like, that's a tough question, right, man? I don't know. And I'll say, well, you know, why don't you just tell me what mom or dad or aunt or uncle or whoever does? And, well, I have an aunt who works at Nature's Bounty. Well, okay, so Nature's Bounty is actually a Long Island manufacturer. They make vitamins and things like that. So I would then explain to them how that represents manufacturing. This would be a good one. My mom works at a vineyard, right? Great job. So the food and wine industry on Long Island is huge, but understanding that it starts with a grape and then we work through the process of that grape becoming a fine Long Island wine. So again, I think the reason I'm spending a little bit of time on this is because for those of you who are on the call, think about how we are teaching our children about what manufacturing is. Do they understand that it is just that? It's taking a raw material and making that raw material into a product that we can sell and use in everyday life. So again, I think that's a fundamental thing that I wanted to drive home in terms of how we talk with our children, how we talk with our peers, and honestly, how I sometimes have to speak at regional meetings about what manufacturing is. So the slide that you're looking at right now, obviously the definition is a little more higher level. But what you see and what's more important is sort of the hub and spokes concept that I talk about often and actually with Phil. So Ignite Long Island is a trade organization that I founded with other peers who are wanting to grow manufacturing and keep manufacturing vital on Long Island. So what you have is manufacturing is the big, right, upper level topic, manufacturing as a whole. And then that's the hub. So I like to think that that's your manufacturing trade organization, but not just Ignite, right? That's any of the entities that we have here on Long Island who have a passion or have a collaborative mission to make sure that manufacturing is strong. So that's the hub right there in the middle. And then you see all the other spokes coming off of that. You have defense, you have medical diagnostics, surgical equipment, food, and so on. Pharmaceuticals as you cruise around to the right, advanced materials, computer graphics, renewable energy. Okay, again, kind of honing in on how we are defining manufacturing. It's all of these different things, all of these different specialties and capabilities that go into what makes manufacturing on Long Island so vital and honestly quite critical to the economic impact and health of the region. So this is, we're going to continue to kind of talk about how this plays in again to the bigger picture. When you think about how we are thinking about where regional money is going, when we're talking about how we are growing our workforce, what we are advocating for, manufacturing is a huge umbrella. And sometimes I don't think that that is understood. We were making a joke earlier in the pre-session of this, so I will now use that. In a prior conversation, I had mentioned that I was going to do a GoFundMe to support manufacturing because I was tired of hearing that manufacturing is dead. So of course I did a little, and I might actually use it as a marketing method out there. And for those of you who remember Pearl Kamer was a Long Island economist years back for LIA. And she and I would go back and forth with this, Long Island is dead. And I would say, no, it's not. And here we are now probably 10 years down the road. And I think of her often because people are still saying that. So we really need to change that image. We need to make sure that the GoFundMe saves the lives of many manufacturers and that you know that we are certainly alive and vibrant here on Long Island. So with that being said, I'll give a little bit of background. Early on, you know, the heritage of Long Island actually is very rich in manufacturing, which is another thing, right? How can we say it's dead and it's not here? It has been here for a very long time and it's continuing to be strengthened. But again, perhaps it's the way we're defining it that the message is not getting across to everyone. So back in the early 1800s, 1930s, Long Island was focused on agriculture and food and shipbuilding. And then the 1930s to 1970s, which I have to say created an unbelievable generation of people. People who were visionaries, incredibly focused and driven, a lot of entrepreneurs in this period of time who understood the value of manufacturing and education. And that's where aerospace came into play. Again, agriculture is strengthened. We started to look at consumer goods. Again, food has always been a vital part of Long Island's history and manufacturing, and shipbuilding continued. And then in the 1970s, a good era. So I happened to be born in 1971, and so was my company. So again, this is when you really started to see the companies grow and flourish. Entrepreneurship became vital, historically in line with what was going on economically. So then you started to see from the 1970s to now, again, aerospace and defense, always a very strong industry. It really functioned as the core of manufacturing, which I think we're still suffering from that because people, I think, had a little bit of an identity crisis and that we were known as the aerospace and defense region. And then when Grumman left in the early 90s, we suffered a little bit again in defining who we were. But being that Long Island is resilient and we're innovative, always have been, always will be, continue to be, you can see by the list of things, and that's not even a complete list, okay? But that goes back to that hub and spokes concept. Look at all the different things that Long Island is now creating and manufacturing. Impressive, very impressive. So when I have a room full of people, and I wish I could ask you all in person, you know, if I just threw out a question and started asking people who they know or if they themselves work in manufacturing, incredible diverse amount of products coming out of this region, which again, why we keep it a secret, I don't know. But part of this mission that I have, so to speak, in addition to running my company, is to make sure that people truly understand the amount of products coming out of here. I'm going to actually pause from talking for a little bit. I'm going to hope that my tech quality here works. I know I have Kristen waiting for me if this doesn't work. So I'm going to play right now a manufacturing video. And first I will apologize. It is a couple years old, so it does make a reference to like 2015, 2016. However, the bigger message and the bigger premise of it is actually still very, very real today. So I will, hopefully this will work.
Long Island's manufacturing industry has led the way in building the pieces that have shaped this nation's history. As America's very first suburb, Long Island has long been uniquely positioned to be an industry leader. From Charles Lindbergh's flight to Paris, to winning World War II for the Allies, discovering DNA, and putting a man on the moon, we have seen historic advances in defense, energy, and medical technology. Long Island's innovative spirit has set the pace and helped shape major advances in science and technology. Not only are we smart and skilled, we are a key player in fueling America's largest city and its principal financial engine. Today, Long Island is home to more than 2.8 million residents with over 3,000 manufacturers that employ more than 71,000 men, women, minorities, and veterans, spread across 12 diverse industry sectors. Our success was built by small manufacturers with big dreams. Manufacturers helped to drive New York's economy with $62.68 billion in manufactured goods exports in 2015, and small business comprised 94.2% of all exporters in New York. In the past 12 months, 200 of Long Island manufacturers posted 8,837 jobs. Long Island is home to an amazing array of manufacturers in a variety of industry sectors. Our food and beverage industry boasts 350 companies and nearly 7,000 employees, including Whitson's Culinary, where meals are prepared for customers around the country. The consumer goods industry is alive and well, led by standout company Clear Vision Optical, who creates top-quality eyewear for a worldwide audience. D'Addario in Farmingdale is revolutionizing the music industry one guitar string at a time. Autronic Plastics, a custom plastic injection molding company, is building prototypes and plastic items that make everyday life possible for people here in the U.S. They are one company out of over 350 that employs 17,000 people in their sector. We are also revolutionizing the pharmaceuticals industry, where PL Developments in Westbury is constantly working to create quality health and beauty products for stores throughout the region. The aerospace and defense sector continues to be strong with over 350 companies employing over 12,000 Long Islanders. These firms continue to support the existing defense and commercial aircraft in operation, but are also critically engaged in the production of brand new aircraft. This trend continues to increase year over year, and we have seen an overall rise to Long Island in the commercial tax base, increased home ownership levels, high-tech jobs for women, minorities, and veterans, and more young people choosing Long Island as their preferred destination to live, work, play, and raise a family. Manufacturing on Long Island is growing, and will lead the way as America continues to grow and thrive. We believe that working together as one voice, we will make a lasting, generational, and economic impact on this place we call home. We are an integral part of the region's future. We are putting Long Island to work in the jobs of tomorrow. All together, working together, we are the manufacturing industry of Long Island.
All right. I think my first experience of doing the tech worked. Hopefully you could all hear that. Kristen, if you can nod your head to tell me that everything was good. Good. Okay, thank you. All right, the next screen here with strategic partners. First and foremost, I've learned if you're not on this list, not on the screen, please don't be offended. The good news is that we have a lot of partners in manufacturing. So the point of the screen is really to emphasize that point. Some of them I'm actually going to discuss a little bit. So WDI is in the bottom left corner, the Workforce Development Institute, and actually they were vital a couple years ago when they came on with a lot of energy and support with funding to run. Actually, they supported that video that you just saw with other partners as well. Really, but again, I haven't focused on this yet, but I will down the road on another slide. It's workforce, right? Workforce. If you go to any meeting, you talk about any issue regarding manufacturing, it's workforce. It's how do we develop our next generation workforce? It's what are we doing to continue training the workforce that we have? Interestingly enough, I'll get into more COVID, but how do we take displaced workers or those that have lost their jobs and actually retrain them to join manufacturing companies with their skills and capabilities? So Workforce Development Institute has been a huge partner in doing that. Other aspects I want to bring up. So you have Stony Brook University on there. They are actually the manufacturing extension partner for this region, which I won't get into in full. But basically, they're the representative for a national manufacturing program, which again is meant to train and educate and help fund manufacturers to grow and be vital. Farmingdale is another partner. Suffolk Community College has a manufacturing workforce training center on campus, and again has been at the forefront there of helping with workforce training. The Discover Long Island is a unique one for those that know Discover Long Island. Ignite, which is again the organization that I founded, that I sit on with Phil. Discover Long Island is focused on tourism. And it became very obvious in talking with Kristen Jarnigan, who's running Discover Long Island, that manufacturing companies and trying to keep companies here and hire people and hopefully bring companies from out of state to New York really has to work hand in hand with Discover Long Island and the tourism aspect. So the dream, of course, is that people come to visit Long Island, they fall in love with it, they want to live here, then they want to work here, and it's one big happy story. But again, the point being, you have to have collaborative efforts. You have to understand what all the different organizations' missions are and how we really do overlap in this mission. Of course, Hofstra is there. And again, I'll say thank you for hosting this and advocating and supporting manufacturing. ESD, upper left corner, they have a series of grants, of course, that help support manufacturing. For anyone that owns a company or is helping operations of a company, manufacturing company, one of the important things with ESD is that you need to have a strategy for growth. And most importantly, you need to look at the opportunities that ESD has to support you before you sign on a dotted line to buy a building, lease a building, and things like that. So that's a little public notice to you all if you're owning companies out there. Please make sure you look at what ESD offers before you commit to buying equipment or buying a building. And then, of course, also ESD has the Regional Economic Council, of which I sit on. President Stu Rabinowitz is one of the co-chairs of the Regional Economic Council. Again, another very vital tool that we have here on Long Island to help promote and support the businesses that are already here. So for all those who represent B&L, as I'm looking at the screen now and seeing more, right? B&L, innovation, science and innovation, incredible things that are being done out there. And again, how do we overlap? They innovate, they create, and then hopefully it gets commercialized and we can make those products here on Long Island, as opposed to the innovation going to another region. So again, the point of that strategic partnership in manufacturing is to understand it's not just the companies who are making really cool stuff here. It really takes the entire region to support our entire sector. The next thing, I think I would have been remiss if I did not have a slide about the COVID impact. Aside from all of us having sort of Zoom burnout, what did COVID do and what did it teach us about manufacturing? The first and foremost, and again, this one I'm not going to read each line. You can read it, but I'm going to kind of go free thought here. The most important thing that came out of this, right, is how we define ourselves. If you can think back to January, quite honestly, I don't even think I recall this answer, but when did we start referring to ourselves as essential or non-essential? Right, it's one of those words that suddenly became part of our common language and vernacular, but I really don't remember when we ever defined ourselves as essential or non-essential. So even just understanding that new language was interesting. And I will reflect a little bit on that era of March and April, more so mid-March, when it seems to have really hit hard. I myself am an aerospace and defense company, so I had another term to use. Not only am I essential, which is wonderful, but I have a critical infrastructure industry, right? That's another term that we had to understand. So what does that mean? It meant that my employees would continue working. But if you remember all the emotions of what people were going through, that was a fearful time. I mean, mid-March was a very fearful time. We didn't really know what we were battling against. We didn't know how the COVID was going to affect us as a region. There was no way for us to know. And people just were scared, right? Scared of getting sick. So as business owners and as essential workers who are not healthcare, right? We're not at the front line like healthcare workers. Those all, which by the way, they all deserve unbelievable honor. I mean, so what they did was amazing. But we were sort of that second tier, right, of essential, the people who continue going to work every day. My reason for focusing on this is that there was a natural evolution of thought that went on, where at first being essential was like, wait, everyone gets to stay home and safe and I have to go to work, right? There is that like, what is that all about? And then I would say about 3 or 4 weeks into it, you start hearing about all the furloughs, right? You start hearing about the layoffs. Companies were closing down. Economy was starting to, obviously go downwards from the effect of it. And then you started to get that shift of people working in the manufacturing arena who were, honestly, they were feeling blessed and fortunate that they were still able to work. And with that, there was an entire new culture in what I think definitely happened in my company, but I think happened in other manufacturing companies too. You became selfless. It wasn't about you anymore. It was about you and your impact on your coworkers. It was you and your impact on your family. Suddenly, it became a much more intimate day-to-day activity with everyone because we really were holding each other accountable to make sure we were staying healthy. And I think that's really important as a region and says a lot about Long Islanders and New Yorkers and the way that we did that. And I said to my company the other day, obviously now I can't have one meeting with everybody, but I broke it out into multiple groups. And I had to basically say, what they did in the evenings after work and on the weekends were never really part of, that wasn't my business. What people did and who they did it with was none of my business. My business was what they did when they were in my building and working for GSE. But what COVID did was suddenly created this environment where it was quite the opposite. What they did when they were not in my company actually was my business and was very much my business, right? If they were irresponsible and went out and did something and then brought it back into my business, that's my business. So again, I think there's a lot of things that maybe the emotional part of COVID that we perhaps are not talking about as much but I saw it day to day, and I think it was a very important thing. And that culture, you know, aspects of that is going to continue on, and I'll be curious to watch how this goes on post-COVID, which hopefully is soon. The other, getting away from the emotion side of it, is what did we learn was also that we needed a hub. And this isn't a plug for my trade organization, but again, a lot of organizations worked together. Okay, so there had to be a hub for best practices and what was going on. So LIA answered the call, right, on some issues. HIA, the Hauppauge Industrial Association, answered the call on some issues. Educational institutions, I'm sure, had a hub, right, that they were calling to get advice. This need to have a core hub for information became critical. So in the realm of manufacturing with Ignite and a lot of the partners that you saw on that screen, we had companies who were calling saying, I think I might not be able to make what I usually make, but I can transform my shop and start making PPE. And what we found, it was actually a little bit of a struggle to, I mean, here you have the cry for people, you know, to make stuff. And then you have the companies, classic New Yorkers, saying, we can do it, we can do it. It was very hard to connect the dots for those two in the beginning, to get the companies that wanted to make things connected with the people who were managing the supplies. So again, the takeaway from this, I hope, is that we develop a better hub and best practices system for manufacturing companies, coordinated with Albany, that we can, again, have better communication and can affect change quicker to be there. And the other sort of important thing that I think Phil alluded to in the beginning, I think that I had it in my head in there, is that we basically, New Yorkers have to make and manufacture what New Yorkers need, right? Pretty fundamental. I like to be independent. I don't like to be reliant on other people or other things to get what we need. And I think that's a message for this region, right? We need to be self-reliant. We need to be independent. We need to decide, God forbid there's another crisis, we need to know that we can make what we need. So that's, I think, an important takeaway and something that we're going to continue to advocate for, again, across the entire sector. So in terms of a strategic plan, again, this is something that I speak about often. I think with anything, you need a strategic plan, whether it's your company, your organization, or even your family, right? We all need some sort of strategic plan. So the strategic plan that I see for manufacturing is number one, again, workforce development. We need good people, and we need people to be trained to do what manufacturing companies need. And again, this is not just the men and women who are on the floor actually putting the parts together. I'm talking workforce development needs right through the entire continuum of workforce. We need folks who understand sales and business development, right? How to get the work to the region. We need accounting departments, right? Who know how to manage from an accounting standpoint. We need contracts management, who know how to manage the contracts coming in from all different sources of customers. Purchasing, we need to understand that there's material science understanding, engineering, again, across that continuum workforce of needs for the company. So again, back to my original, how do you define manufacturing? Not only how do we define it, but then how do we really operationalize what it means to be working in the manufacturing field? So again, there's a broad scope of jobs, and I know my HR manager is probably on this call, and I did not mention HR. So Nancy, this is for you. Our field absolutely needs a strong HR management field, also because there is so much training going on. Technology is constantly changing. So not only do we have to train the folks that we have under the roof, but we also have to train others coming into the area. So actually HR is a huge, huge issue right now, and how industry works with educational institutions to develop that workforce. And I think I actually have a slide later on that goes all into this. Regional supply chain, again, another big bullet in the strategic plan. I'm gonna kind of say it with the next one. So fix an identity crisis. I have used that phrase too, so I apologize if you hear me speak and I'm using the same phrases over and over, but repetition perhaps is a good thing. So the identity crisis that Long Island has, right? Grumman, 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 Grumman. That's all we used to hear, is that Long Island, Grumman left and we don't know who we are anymore, right? But if you think back to the slide a few ago with the different periods there, Grumman ended like in 1990-ish. But you saw from the amount of products that Long Island makes that we really have to focus on our identity. We really are still a manufacturing region. The top 3 areas in terms of economic impact for the Long Island region is government and healthcare, and honestly, they flip back and forth between 1 and 2, but those 2 are usually 1 and 2. And manufacturing is 3rd, and I'm hoping that the most recent studies are still saying that, but I feel pretty confident manufacturing is still way up there in terms of the economic impact, not only because of the number of people we employ, but the value of the dollar, right? So for every dollar, manufacturing, I think, puts maybe 240. Again, I don't have my latest stats, so don't quote me on that. If this is going public, I could get in trouble. But for that being said, the economic impact is significant for manufacturing. And I'll get those fact finders to come back at me with the latest data on that. But that is something to, again, really focus on. That regional supply chain for each of those items as well is critical. So are we marketing ourselves? Are we going out and telling large customers about the regional supply chain that we have? Again, because of what I do for a living, I know that for the aerospace and defense arena, the Boeings, the Lockheeds and such, they love coming to Long Island because there are so many companies who can manufacture what they need. It's very efficient. Again, for me personally, I can buy the raw material, I can machine the raw material, I can process the raw material, and I can ship it all close in this region. I did have a 7-year stint in Georgia. One of my facilities was in Georgia. It's not New York. Nothing against Georgia, if anyone's on here from the fine South. It was different. You know, FedEx did not come every day. I think FedEx comes to our facility a couple times a day. In Georgia, I had to schedule it to come like once a week. Completely changed the way that you do business in these different regions. So we really need to promote that and advocate again for the value of what we have here on Long Island. Yeah, yeah.
In line with what you just are talking about,
Sure.
What's your opinion of why we haven't been able to brand ourselves better, and who or how can we put that together in a cohesive way? In other words, I'm sure a lot of us feel the same as what you just said, but why do you think it's not happening?
Again, I think there's no one taking that hub position, taking that, that central messaging position. And listen, I've been at 20 years is how long I've been in this industry watching this. We are not at a loss for people who are engaged and wanting manufacturing to succeed. It's just we don't have anybody bringing it all together in one central message and one strategic plan. So Phil, I mean, you've been at, I call them Groundhog Day meetings, where I swear it's the same conversation going over, from 10 years ago. And the other, I mean, I'll really throw it out there. We're not getting funded. I think there's this perception that Long Islanders have wealth and money as a region. I think there is a misperception that somehow, that little spit of land off the city can manage on their own and they don't need the funding that perhaps other regions upstate and elsewhere have. We know about the Buffalo Billion, I won't go there. There's other areas upstate that get a lot of funding. So there are manufacturing institutes being built up there. Actual, brick and mortar buildings called the Manufacturing Institute. And yet we can't really get that here. And it's an enigma. I mean, some of it's a mystery to me, Phil, but it's really not when you think about it. We just have to get one voice. Again, all those logos that I had on that slide, everyone has to agree on one voice, one plan, and advocate for it. I think that's, again, wonderful people, wonderful ideas, but no one's bringing it together. So Phil, I don't know, hopefully you, I mean, I think you share a similar thought. And if anyone on this call, you know, has ideas or ways to help, that's really the call, right? That's what we're trying to do, is let's get the stakeholders together. I don't care, you know, what side of the fence you're on. I could care less whether you're right, left, or center aisle. If you care about manufacturing, then we have to kind of put politics aside and make sure that we're doing the right thing for the region. So that's probably a long answer, Phil.
I just wanted you to share with the audience some of the challenges that we have. Another thing that you might want to comment is possibly we've, as a group in manufacturing, haven't really tied well into education, to especially higher education. Maybe going in the future, there's a way to do that that would help us help Long Island as a whole, both on the educational side as well as on the manufacturing side.
Absolutely. And so Phil, as you represent Hofstra, which again is a supporter, as are really all the four-year colleges that we have. Another gift, right? This region has so many incredible assets that we just tend to keep quiet about. But so Hofstra and their peer four-year colleges have incredibly strong engineering programs, material science programs, cybersecurity. I know we talked about that yesterday, right? This is a huge area of interest for manufacturing, is the cyber. Critical, very critical. But are we getting the industry engagement, which Phil is perhaps where you're going with this, right?
Yeah.
How do we then get the industry engagement with the educators? But even beyond that, how do we actually help the educators create the curriculum that is relevant? And having that dialogue. And that's not an easy task, and I certainly understand that. But we have to at least start the process and start trying, right? Instead of not try, let's at least try and then revamp it as we go. But I think that's critical, again, that all the four-year colleges be engaged with industry, whether it's through the co-op program that Hofstra specifically has, or other internship programs. That's vital. And then, of course, you have the technical schools, you have the BOCES programs and the other tech programs that are on Long Island. Again, we are fortunate and blessed to have all these different programs. And I said it a little bit in the beginning, right? How are we defining manufacturing? Well, we better be defining it. The kid who wants to maybe learn how to be a welder, and I've used this example too, is one smart kid. The kid who wants to learn how to be a welder, because right now there is such a need for welding and such a need for that skill set, that ability, right? HVAC, welding, all that. You hear that at many of these meetings. But not only that, but let's call it a noble job. Let's call that a job that is noble and a job to be proud of, just as much as an engineering degree from Hofstra. So no offense to all those, right? But all of these jobs across that entire continuum, and that's what I'm talking about, is vital to manufacturing. So, you know, I don't do one job is more important than the other. Absolutely not. That's not the way I look at it. Every single job that is required to make a manufacturing company successful is of equal importance. It doesn't matter where they got their training or what they specifically, every job is important in manufacturing. And that message has to get across to teachers and guidance counselors and families and everybody. So that is vital. You know, if I don't have folks on the floor to make stuff, my engineers can develop and create lovely CATIA drawings as much as they want. But I need people who can actually make the parts as well. So that is important. And Phil, thank you for continuing that conversation and how we engage industry. That could be a whole nother topic in and of itself, but that is vital. So I need manufacturing companies and HR managers to make sure that they're talking with the different programs at the different schools. I personally have been trying to get a composites technician program out there to kind of fit the needs of my company. It's very much a specialty. So that is, again, you know, let's be talking. Let's not keep business owners and operations folks in the one building. Let's get them out talking with educators I do want to say we have a Long Island manufacturing apprenticeship program. I will link that, and hopefully my technology is another success here. So if you were to go to theignitelongisland.org, we have some information there about some different Long Island manufacturing apprenticeship programs. And if you really are interested, I actually don't know. Phil, do you recall how many different apprenticeship programs New York State DOL has approved?
No, but there's at least close to a dozen, I think.
Yeah, it's actually, I think it's even more profound with that across the board of apprenticeship programs. Within manufacturing, I think Phil is correct, probably about a dozen specialized. But the development of the apprenticeships are really taking off. And again, that is something that we are hoping to engage industry with. All right, moving along. Okay, I may have talked a little bit about this already. The marketing and branding, promoting regional capability, products and services, looking at maybe where we don't have the strengths and we need to strengthen ourselves. A lot of that is into the marketing. And then, so the attraction and retention is interesting. So again, without getting too involved in this, Empire State Development, like I said, has different programs for supporting manufacturing companies. And this is a little bit of a sensitivity for me. And I think it was even in Newsday, so I feel okay saying this. So I mentioned that I had a company in Georgia and I brought it back to New York, right? So that's a great thing. New York company, right? That's a great headline. New York company brings her company back from Georgia to New York, hires all these people, buys a building. It's a great story. But what are we doing to support the companies that are here and are not threatening to leave? And that has been my latest thing. Like, why does a business owner have to threaten to leave to get the support? There is no value in that for anyone, really. So the way we are looking at Long Island loyalties is what I refer to it as. We really have to evaluate, and I do look to the region for that, on how we maybe should reassess the different programs that we have to help support. It shouldn't be this company's threatening to leave, so let's give them money. It should be this company has decided to stay loyal to Long Island and not leave, and they're hoping to hire people or at least retain, right? Let's honor retaining employees right now. With automation coming on the scene, retaining is actually just as important as hiring at that point, as long as their numbers are not going down. So this is a real sensitive point for me, because again, it goes into this regional strategic plan. Let's look at the companies that have been here, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And let's look at how we are going to help them continue to grow and not leave. And again, the threat to leave, I'll say it again, the impact on that, then the employees start to hear, right? I mean, it's bad all the way around. So I'll stop with that. And then the other is, how do we attract manufacturing companies to come here? A lot of people say, oh, they could never manufacture here. It's way too expensive. The cost of living is too much. The cost of housing is too much. Everything's too much. That's not true. That's not true. I've been here 50 years. There's other companies who have been here and have figured it out. And the important thing there is that it's a niche. You just have to find the niche that works, right? So Long Island tends to make the higher priced, higher quality items, right? We can't compete with the lower labor rates in other regions. That is absolutely true. But when you think about what we're founded on, innovation, right? High level of innovation and creativity, that resilience, that work ethic, that overall New Yorker personality. There's a lot to be said about why a manufacturing company would want to come here. And I think we have to, again, shift the way, maybe the lens that we're using and how we get people to come here. And the other, of course, is looking at other markets. Wind and green technology is a big one that we're looking at. For those that watch manufacturing news, I think we have 3 different wind programs. Is that right, Phil?
Yes.
So there's 3 different entities right now looking at the wind industry on Long Island. And that's another vital thing to look at, is how we play into that supply chain. The initial thought is that we may not be the supply chain per se, But there's no reason why we can't develop into that and start to pull the suppliers from other regions and take it over here. So again, in terms of, actually, Kristen, how am I doing with time here? Doing all right. New Yorkers, again, must make what New Yorkers need. We did it with COVID. We proved it with COVID. We have to continue to send that message out. And increasing the use of the local supply chain and really talking us up. We tend to be very humble. We're a very humble region, not talking about how great we are. So again, some of this is redundant, but I'll say it again. The perception, right? Perception. We are a manufacturing community. We are a manufacturing region. We better understand it. We better continue to explain to our children and our adults and those guidance counselors and those teachers that we really are a manufacturing region. We make incredible products on Long Island. So that we really have to change that. Yes, it's an expensive place to live. Yes, the housing and taxes are expensive, but can we just like put that aside and look at the assets that we have? Aside from the fact that it is absolute beautiful region to live in, the educational institutions are like no other, superior and abundant, right? Very fortunate. The supply chain that we have from the raw materials, again, as I mentioned on the very beginning of this conversation, we can get the raw materials here for many of the products that we need, so which is very unique. And we have to Phil's point, we have to create a unified voice. We have to have one message, very clear, not only to Albany, but to, on a national level. I speak actually on a national level, where uniquely, sometimes I get more of the feedback on the national level about how great Long Island is. So people outside Long Island think Long Island's great. I just have to get Long Islanders to understand that we're great in manufacturing. So getting that unified voice really to send that message. Collaborative efforts, again, the slide with everyone on it and those that were not, we do have collaboration, but we have to make sure that we're all, riding the ship in the same direction and making sure that we're on point, and also not chipping away at too many things at one time. Let's pick 3 main points and really attack it and try and get those accomplished to move forward. The build a consortium of strategic partners, again, I think we have done that. We're going to continue to grow it. Ignite Long Island is the manufacturing consortium, but we are not one, and that's what, if anyone knows my personality, it's the hub. That's just the hub. I need all the spokes around me to work with me so that we can move forward. And that message is incredibly sincere and very, very clear that I need everyone to sort of get on the same messaging here. And then the legislative agenda, that again kind of accumulates everything that we've been talking about. We have to make sure that we're funded. We have to make sure companies are getting the support they need. We have to make sure that the workforce and the schools who are training the future workforce are also getting funded, and that basically that they're understood, right? We just want to be understood.